If you're a fan of DC Comics, there's no way you haven't heard about Peacemaker lately. Plus, I mean, how do you ever forget a character like that? Someone who loves peace so much they're willing to kill for it is an interesting concept. Most people are familiar with the character because of John Cena's portrayal of him in The Suicide Squad and his HBO Max series, Peacemaker. Christopher Smith has been around for decades in the comic books, and unlike Batman or Superman, he's not defined by his superpowers or gadgets. He's defined by the psychology of a soldier whose ideals got completely warped into something else. To understand him better, we have to take off one layer after another. So join us as we break down Peacemaker mentally, physically, and symbolically. Before we get into this breakdown, though, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. Who exactly is Peacemaker? Is he superhuman? As fun as it would be to say, oh, Peacemaker's John Cena, there's a little more to him than that. Christopher Smith may seem like a superhuman with all his actions and behaviors, but we promise you, he's no metahuman. He doesn't have any super serum in his body, or alien physiology, or even magic at his disposal. The only thing that pushes him into behaving the way he does is his extreme conditioning and elite military background. He's unrelentingly dedicated to his mission, so in a lot of ways, you could say that he's the peak of human training. There's nothing beyond him, even compare him to characters like the Punisher or Batman. Now, if you're one of the many people who thought he was a metahuman, we don't blame you. You see, his resilience and combat ability are kinda like he can fight through injuries that would totally incapacitate people like us. He can endure grueling missions with barely any rest. He can go against a barrage of enemies and still come out on top with ease. And all of this is a result of discipline, military drills, and his obsession with peace. This obsession with peace is what defines him the most. Unlike Superman or Wonder Woman, both of whom inspire peace through hope and compassion, Peacemaker gets the peace he desires through violence. He's willing to cross as many boundaries as he deems necessary if it means he'll get his peace. This kind of warped ideal makes him larger than life, but truly, it's his pathological conviction that grants him power. So no, Peacemaker isn't superhuman. He just really, really wants peace. What's his origin story? Now, Peacemaker has been around for decades, and each time he's shown in continuity, his origin shifts a little. However, despite all of these differences in his story, the essence of his life remains the same. Christopher Smith is a man who was scarred by war, raised under a toxic ideology, and eventually, he was broken by his own psyche. While we know Peacemaker to be from DC Comics, in reality, Peacemaker was first published in the 1960s by Charlton Comics. Later, DC would acquire the rights to the character, along with a few other characters from Charlton Comics. The original masterminds behind Peacemaker were Joe Gill and Pat Boyette. In those early stories, we were introduced to Christopher Smith as a diplomat's son. His father died during wartime, and that left a lot of scars on Christopher. As he grew up, Chris ended up completely consumed by the idea of preventing any and every future conflict. He felt that going about it through negotiations or politics would make things unnecessarily slow, so instead he took direct military intervention. He became the Peacemaker, the one man willing to kill to prevent others from dying at war. Eventually, DC decided they were going to integrate him into their multiverse. The modern and post-crisis versions of Peacemaker are much darker than the original version we were introduced to back in the 60s. Instead of being a soldier with a noble mission, Christopher was now a soldier haunted by guilt, hallucinations, and trauma. Some versions would show him having auditory hallucinations of his dead father or the people he killed, which further pushed him into violent obsession. Now, this unstable foundation for Peacemaker immediately makes him a lot more tragic than other vigilante heroes. Unlike Batman, who channels his trauma into something positive and protects people using it, Peacemaker never found that balance. He became an extremist and couldn't reconcile his ideals with the violent methods he started to use. In James Gunn's The Suicide Squad and the HBO series Peacemaker, Christopher's background is fleshed out and no less dark. His father, Augie Smith, is a white supremacist and an abusive patriarch who broke Christopher's psyche from a young age. In these versions, the idea of peace is no longer a noble cause that Christopher is working towards. Instead, it's a desperate attempt taken by him to justify his actions and hopefully distance himself from his father. So, unlike other heroes, his origin story isn't about how he became a costumed vigilante. For Peacemaker, his origin story is all about what led to the birth of the paradox that makes a man see peace as an absolute that he's willing to use violence, murder, and even tyranny to achieve. What's his physical build like? Peacemaker's body is a thing to marvel at. I mean, literally. He strikes the perfect balance between combat efficiency and size. He's 6'2" and weighs over 200 pounds, but all of that weight comes from muscles. He's broad-shouldered and built for intimidation and endurance. The best part about Peacemaker's physique is that, unlike other heroes whose bodies verge on impossible, his body is thoroughly grounded in reality. He looks like someone who spent years in military training because, well, he is. This build is very important to his characterization. This makes him look borderline superhuman because it's the peak of human physique that can only be achieved through training for a long time. He tends to dominate in hand-to-hand combat because of his size, literally overpowers his opponents by using his raw physicality. Despite being muscular, Peacemaker isn't bulky, so when you see him pull off some of the most wondrous, agile moves, or when you see him catching up to people in a matter of seconds, it makes sense. That's why his fighting style can be best described as brute force being used in the most tactically efficient ways. His conditioning is also another crucial pillar that helps him maintain his legacy as Peacemaker. A soldier should always be able to carry heavy gear for a long time to build his endurance and not shy away from violence. This is exactly what Peacemaker's body is for. His biggest weapon is literally his body. He's trained to absorb anything thrown his way and keep on moving. His stamina, strength, and cardio are all at that superhuman level. And the reason he managed to achieve this physicality is that he considers his body to be a part of his mission. Everything about his body is a testament to his ideology, from the scars to the endurance. His lifestyle is militant because he's always prepared to act. You could say that out of Punisher and Batman, Peacemaker is more Punisher-coded. His strength is attainable. His physique and his gains are a result of the grind, and because he's so grounded, Peacemaker is kind of terrifying to witness. You can really imagine someone like him existing in real life. I mean, maybe not the helmet, but that body structure does exist. Does his costume offer any anatomical advantages? Anyone who's seen the Peacemaker's costume once will probably have a hard time forgetting it. That red and white costume is more than just a flashy uniform with primary colors showcasing his muscles. This suit, at its core, is designed for functionality and peak performance. It provides Christopher Smith with mobility, protection, and the psychological presence necessary when you're one decision away from winding up dead. Construction of the costume gives the most basic advantage. It's made out of ballistic-grade fabric, which drastically increases his ability to survive gunfights. When you combine that with tactical gear like pouches and holsters, the costume becomes a treasure trove of weaponry that keeps him moving as swiftly as always. The most iconic element of his costume has to be the chrome dove-crested helmet. The anatomical benefits of these helmets are completely undeniable. It acts as a symbol of his unwavering ideology, also acting as advanced technology. Depending on the version of Peacemaker we're talking about, the helmet can shoot lasers, protect against blunt force trauma, or generate sonic waves. It also acts like military-grade armor, his skull safe while he literally charges into danger. Other than the physical advantages, the red and white costume also gives Peacemaker a psychological advantage that's not often talked about. The bold shirt with the shining helmet, paired with the white pants, immediately makes Peacemaker visible. This visibility immediately terrified the enemies because if someone intentionally made themselves visible in combat, probably had a few tricks up their sleeves. And also, it's as loud as Christopher's identity and ideology. It's like a warning, blaring at everyone in the vicinity that peace is coming whether they like it or not. The entire costume transforms Peacemaker's body into something bigger than that. Without the costume, he's just another mercenary. With it, he's a message, a symbol, a contradiction, but also a weird kind of hero.
No! Peace out, mother.
How durable is Peacemaker's body? Despite his near-superhuman abilities, Peacemaker is ultimately just like us. He's vulnerable to the same stuff we are. Bullets, blades, blunt trauma, that stuff gets to him. But because of his endurance, none of these injuries manage to get the upper hand. He's got one of the highest pain thresholds when it comes to human vigilantes in DC Comics. He's kind of unstoppable. Throughout his stories spanning the decades, this man has been through hell and back. He's taken gunshots, beatings, and even explosions. However, none of that has made him collapse because Christopher kept fighting long past the point anyone else in his place would have stopped. He does all of that thanks to his willpower and conditioning. He can compartmentalize pain nor fatigue, push through any devastating injuries thrown his way simply for the sake of peace and his own stubbornness. But his limits are just as clear. His broken bones don't heal magically, concussions make it hard for him to make judgment calls, blood loss can kill him. So he's quite reliant on weaponry, tactical planning, and armor to ensure that he'll survive the prolonged battles he keeps throwing himself into. Who would have thought that the love for peace would literally make it so Christopher almost dies for it over and over again? Does he have any enhanced senses or reflexes? We've had many heroes who have an overall normal physique but end up getting enhanced senses or reflexes because of experimentation, mutation, or just plain old magic. Peacemaker, however, not one of those guys. His 5 senses are all within the human norm. That seems kinda crazy considering all the things we've seen him do, but it's true. The only thing that sets him apart from us is how he uses and trains those senses. Peacemaker was an elite operative. He'd undergone years and years of tactical training that was specifically designed to sharpen his situational awareness. He's also practiced in rapid response drills, target acquisitions, and battlefield scanning. Thanks to this kind of rigorous training, he can react way faster than average people because he's conditioned to anticipate and act without hesitation, making it seem like his reflexes are faster than everyone else's. Let me give you a small example. Let's say you or I were in a combat situation. If we're not already trying to run away or surrender immediately, we're probably going to get our asses beat. I think we usually all agree on that. Not Peacemaker, though. The moment he's in a situation like that, he identifies threats, figures out targets, and executes the necessary actions in a matter of seconds. This isn't superhuman speed, mind you. This is just experience and discipline working together. This gives him an edge that not many of us have. Similarly, his marksmanship, as impeccable as it may be, doesn't come from supervision. Instead, it's the result of practicing hand-eye coordination and steady nerves under pressure for years. Another key factor you have to remember is how Peacemaker benefits from his equipment. His helmet, which in a lot of versions is enhanced with sonar or heads-up display systems, extends his inherent sensory range. So without this equipment, it's hard to take him down because his instincts make him almost clairvoyant at times. But when you add the gadgets to the mix, he's immediately leveled up and almost impossible to defeat. However, since he's bound by the limits of his body, Christopher can experience sensory overload, fatigue, and disorientation. Loud explosions going off next to him will stun him. Flashbangs will blind him, just like they do to us. After extended amounts of time in combat, at one point, fatigue will get to him and he'll slow down. Despite all of that, even if he's tired, slow, and injured, Christopher will always have the upper hand in combat because of just how honed his skill set is. Which brings us to our next question. How skilled is he with weapons? If you really want to compare Peacemaker to a superhuman in any aspect, this would be the aspect in question. His mastery of weaponry is truly astounding. He's one of DC's greatest marksmen. He's literally on par with figures like Deadshot and Deathstroke. There's not a single kind of weapon that you could bring up to him that he couldn't use. Whether they're small arms or explosives, he uses them all. From a very young age, Christopher trained in a paramilitary and military context. Over the years, he developed near-perfect accuracy with firearms. You could even say that rifles and pistols are like second nature to him. But that's not where his versatility ends. It's only the beginning. He's equally skilled with grenades, knives, and advanced or alien weaponry whenever the situation calls for it. His adaptability is one of his strongest assets, and that's not up for debate. The most fascinating aspect about Peacemaker might be how seamlessly he can integrate any weapon into his combat style. Peacemaker becomes one with the weapon. Everything from his psychological state to his body movements are simply focused on maximizing his arsenal. We often see him carrying multiple firearms and switching between them mid-combat, depending on how the combat's going. Other than firearms, Christopher is a very competent hand-to-hand combatant. While he may not be on the level of Lady Shiva or Batman, he can use his weapons and physical power together to a devastating effect. Whenever you see him fight against someone in hand-to-hand, chances are he'll go for the kill because he hasn't followed the traditional martial arts discipline. Plus, another thing that sets him apart from other heroes is his intent. For Peacemaker, the weapons he uses are tools of peace. They're instruments of control, which he uses to push forward his vision of peace. So, that framing transforms mass firepower into something redemptive in his eyes, which, let's be real, is kind of terrifying. What role do his psychological traits play in his physiology? The biggest weapon and game changer in Peacemaker's life is his mind. His psychological state influences his physical performance through and through. You could say that his fractured mind is both his biggest blessing and worst curse. Peacemaker has a history of mental instability and trauma. Many versions of his character suffer from auditory hallucinations, either from his father or the people he's killed. These hallucinations blur the line between reality and obsession, which is incredibly psychologically taxing, but they also harden him against fear. Peacemaker doesn't feel the hesitation in the face of death or worry about guilt because he channels those voices into fuel for his mission. His trauma dulls his sensitivity to doubt, fear and pain. This psychology, in turn, affects his physiology. Adrenaline rushes into his system and he's able to fight off enemies even though he's bleeding out and his injuries should incapacitate him. His obsession with peace narrows his focus and perception, which gives him enough motivation to go after his targets single-mindedly without caring about anything else happening around him. And yeah, that includes pain and fatigue. He can push forward through anything as long as the end result is peace. However, he's also fragile because he doesn't have a concept of self-preservation. Every preservation skill he has goes after his idea of peace and often takes unnecessary risks. He doesn't listen to medical advice and ends up injuring himself. He also doesn't take his medications or rest appropriately, which in turn causes long-term damage to his health. Peacemaker effectively walks the fine line between mental strength and self-destruction simply because he can. His identity as warrior for peace also doesn't help. He genuinely believes that peace can only be achieved through violence and is able to justify every single one of his actions. This allows him to push himself to his limits physically, yes, but it also isolates him emotionally. So, in a lot of ways, you could say that Peacemaker is physical proof of how psychology can affect a person's physiology. Marvelous verdict! Peacemaker is a paradox. He's not a metahuman, but his abilities are like that because of conditioning, obsession, and training. Everything about him, from his helmet to his skills, makes him lethal, but at the end of the day, his body is just like yours and mine. The only difference? He loves peace to a violent degree. How do you feel about Peacemaker as a character, and what do you think his biggest weakness is? Do you guys think your favorite hero could defeat Peacemaker, and if so, how? Let us know your thoughts in the comments down below, and if you enjoyed this content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Otherwise, thanks for watching, stay safe out there, and have a marvelous day.